Since we're talking about climate change in this episode, I figured I'd stand in front of these dramatic wind turbines because climate change, we all know it's happening really fast. About as fast as that loud train coming, ruining the shot I set up for 45. But one of the big questions is, what role is AI playing? Based on all the negative headlines, I'm fitting to unplug all the machines and the data centers.
There's plenty of things that are bad,
Yeah.
but AI is not that bad. I am the rare climate activist who actually thinks we're not doomed. Do you actually realize that the new science, like breakthrough in the last 5 years, if we do get to net zero emissions, it will go back to normal? That is a game changer that no one is talking about in climate science.
Not only does our guest think that there's a path back to normal, back to net zero, he thinks AI is what can help us get there. And the kicker? You're probably already using the tech that's helping us do it.
If you are sitting in the United States and you're using an iPhone, it waits until the local grid has surplus clean energy and it charges then.
I still can't believe this shot is so beautiful. Welcome to Life with Machines, powered by Lenovo, and hopefully, the wind. I'm Baratunde Thurston. Now, right now I'm standing, but soon I'll be sitting with my guest, Gavin McCormick, who is not an AI apologist, nor is he a chatbot. He's got some of the strongest climate credentials in the field. He co-founded, with Al Gore, Climate Trace, which is designed to track emissions all across the world. And Gavin is here to change the way you think about AI and the climate crisis.
People are not prepared for the psychological change of, for 150 years, emissions have been going up. We are this close to the other side of the story, and it's going to be exponential.
If you're like me and you're used to the climate story always being doomsday, devastating bad news, this episode will hit different. Me and these windmills will be back in a little bit, but in the meantime, stick around for some good news on climate, some sobering news on our democracy, and for my post-interview chat with our AI co-producer BLAIR, who helps me unpack my feelings after Gavin shifted them like the sands of time, changing everything I thought I knew about climate change. We got to slow this train down immediately. Once we get to net zero, things go back to normal. My understanding has been that quite the opposite, actually, that if we stopped emitting everything today, that there's enough carbon that's already been released in the past 200 years and especially the past 50 years, that there's momentum.
No, because what you're talking about was the state of the art 5 years ago. And the big new surprise from climate models that nobody's talking about, the way it gets phrased is the feedback loops are stronger than we knew.
Yes.
And you can interpret that statement two ways. One way you can interpret it is, if we keep pumping this stuff in the atmosphere, it's going to be exponential. It's not going to get a little bit warmer. It's going to, you release 1 ton and that causes 2 tons, that causes 3 tons. The other way you can see it is, that means if you reduce a ton, you actually reduce 2 tons, 3 tons, 4 tons. And I've called reporters with both versions of the story, and one version sells papers and the other version doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely true that if we don't get this problem under control, we are in big trouble.
What do you think that timeline is, and where are we on the path to that reversal?
So first of all, I don't mean to say everything's gonna be fine. I mean, everything could be fine. So this is a choice we have.
Yeah.
We came in with a hair's breadth in August of a thing that has never happened.
August of 2024.
In modern history, August 2024. We almost started going down, not up. And that hasn't happened since 1850. And we kind of missed it. So now we're saying, like, okay, is it going to be August 2025? Maybe it's going to be August 2026. I am not saying it's fine. Yeah. I am saying there is a path where it really could be fine.
Whew. All right. So you've got me surprisingly jazzed, and it feels like there's coffee in my mug, but it's just
that's right.
It's
that's
hope
right.
in my ears.
And I'm a pessimist. I don't come by hope easily. For 20 years, 2 things have been true every single year. Every single year, the IPCC says, if we don't get emissions under control, actually new science says it's going to be even worse than we thought. And every year, the global emissions community's predictions of how much emissions are going to go up this year is wrong. And we make more progress cutting emissions than was considered the best case scenario. Every year, the consequences are worse than was predicted. Every year the emissions are better, we're predicted 20 years in a row. That's not a coincidence. And so it is going to get nasty out there. People are going to get hurt. But at the same time, we're finally actually solving the problem. And the issue is there's a lag. And that is going to mess with politics, I think, because it's not going to feel true. It's going to feel like we're losing just as we finally start winning.
This is like the plot of a movie.
It just feels more and more to me like somebody wrote this script to be exciting, but it's what's actually in the data.
Yeah. The politics point you raise is a good one. And I'm glad you did, because we have a new administration in the US, in the return of the Trump administration. We have a wave around the world of more authoritarian, absolutely, or authoritarian, curious political leadership. But what we're faced with here is a dramatic rollback in the steps that have been effective to turn that emissions trend around. We've got removing from the Paris Accords again. We've got the overt embrace and encouragement to burn fossil fuels, to rip open federal lands and tribal lands. We've got the denial, not just of the climate crisis, but of wind power and solar power, federal government no longer green lighting those projects. So in light of all of that, are we doomed?
I think the honest answer is that we now know we are going to beat climate change. And that is a stunning fact that people should know.
We're going to beat climate change.
We are going to beat climate change.
However,
what if the battle to beat climate change, we lose democracy in the meantime? That's what keeps me up at night. It is going to be a nasty, gnarly battle. And if it takes 10 years before everybody realizes we're turning this thing around, what if by the time we beat climate change, we have bigger problems? That's what's worrying me.
Yeah. I'm just sitting with that. It has been hard to imagine a bigger challenge than an uninhabitable Earth, to quote David Wallace Wells's great book title, and terrifying possible prediction. And the contrast of like winning this epic battle but losing another one. The self-governance, the power of the people, that democracy is tragic.
I find that it's my role to let people know that we are doing better in one battle than people think.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself wondering if there's somebody who thinks that it's better than I know in the other battle, but I haven't heard anyone saying self-governance is going better than you think.
You might be in a conversation with that person, Gavin.
Interesting. Talk to me.
So, similar to your projections around the climate crisis, it's not a prediction, but it's a possibility that we could lose the democracy that we're familiar with, but we could gain one that works better.
That is really interesting.
I'll just give some poetic credit to his Valerie Gore. Back in 2016, 2017, in that moment of like thrashing democracy and its possible death, she has this famous line, "What if the darkness we're in is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb?" That our democracy isn't dying, it's being born. And birth is painful, and birth is dark, and birth is bloody, but it is the precursor to literally new life. And so that's what keeps me going, is like, okay, yes, we see backsliding, institutional trust is down, all the metrics are pointing in terrifying directions, like the size of the storms we feel in the climate crisis. And there are communities who are reminding us of other ways of being together. And that news story isn't out there as much as it could be. So good to meet you, fellow traveler.
You too. Thank you for sharing that. That's so hopeful.
So on the road there, we are going through a big technological transformation called artificial intelligence. And a lot of this show is predicated on that. And where AI meets the climate crisis, where it meets the environment, there's a lot of charge and a lot of fear and a lot of concern. How bad is AI for the environment. I'll give you a scale. On the low end, I toss a non-recyclable plastic straw, into a field. On the high end, I pour raw crude oil on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and light it aflame, and then stream it through high, carbon burning web servers for all the world to see.
You're going to think I'm an optimist. If you want to talk about what is bad, there's plenty of things that are bad.
Yeah.
But AI is not that bad. Here's why. There's two components to where the emissions come from, right?
Okay.
One is it uses a lot of energy. The other is that energy is produced from fossil fuels. If it doesn't do those two things, it can be bad for democracy, but it's not bad for the environment. And in terms of the energy consumption, there have been a lot of predictions that it's going to grow exponentially, but let's just take stock of where we are right now. Right now, 2% of electricity is used for software. Less than that is used for AI.
2% of all electricity today is used for software. And how much of that is used for AI?
Maybe 3/4 of it at this point, something like that.
Okay.
So call it 1.5%.
Yeah.
You need a whole lot of growth before 1.5% becomes a problem on energy. And that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people like DeepSeek saying, I'm not sure it's going to happen. There's precedent from things like Bitcoin, when Ethereum came out with something that used 1,000 times less energy, and everybody had said that's not an option. It is not at all clear that AI needs to grow. And there's companies like Salesforce out there saying, this is not inevitable. Google made a decision to switch search to AI and use 30 times more energy. Salesforce went the other way. They're talking about small language models. It's not clear that they're meaningfully less effective, but they're massively less energy consuming. We have a choice in whether AI is going to be the really dirty version or not. And are we going to support the companies picking the dirty option or not, and they're going to change or not? And that's just the energy side. And then on how do you make that energy? Some of these companies have very good track records on powering it all on solar. Say what you want about Amazon, they are powering it all on 100% wind and solar, and they are starting to use clever techniques to make that wind and solar even more effective. And honestly, they and Microsoft are bordering on being carbon negative at this point. And Google's not. And that's a pretty interesting situation for us as a consumer to know that it's not AI is automatically going to light the Atlantic on fire equivalent. It's like, well, what choices are they going to make? This is 100% under the control of these companies, how they want it to go down. And as consumers, it's 100% on which of these products are we going to use, and are we going to nudge them to do it the good way?
You're just full of surprises, Gavin. And this is, I'm happy to hear this, and I want to dig in.
Yeah.
When we say AI and the energy use being high, is that inclusive of all AI, the algorithmic AI, the predictive AI, the large language model AI? Or is it primarily the LLMs driving that part of the discussion in terms of the concern for energy use?
So AI is not new, right? We've had AI since 1950 something. It's LLMs that are using so much energy. And one reason I was an optimist is it's not at all obvious from the perspective of someone like me who comes at the tech from what does it accomplish, not how is the code written. It's not at all obvious that large language models are the future of AI. Just because we found one path that works a little better than what we had yesterday and uses vastly more energy, that does not mean that's where this story is going in the long run. It might if we choose that option.
So if AI's climate impacts are not as bad as we think, they still exist. So what are the negative climate impacts of AI as you see them? If it's not the ballooning emissions, what else is it?
Totally. I think, I want to keep emphasizing that it can be done clean, but that doesn't mean that everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people building data centers that are powered on fossil fuels right now. And, maybe when I say it's bad business, I guess if all you care about is get the thing built as fast as possible, you don't care what it costs, there can be situations where actually natural gas makes sense. But that's real short-term thinking. But some people are doing it. And what I see every day is there's a temptation if you're a giant corporation to just fake it. And I paint a picture of how AI could make things better.
Yes, please.
There's this thing called a power purchase agreement. It was a Google innovation that allows you to say, I'm going to build wind or solar over here and sign a complex contract with the power grid so that I can use it over there. And why that matters is because we don't always use energy in the sunny, windy places. And that really cracked open a new market. Well, what happened there is Google had so much money, they could pay to do something that was like a premium, but now everybody in the world can sign PPAs. And there's this new technique that that Apple and Amazon and sometimes Microsoft and Meta are doing, where they are figuring out how can you go to a community where the pollution burden is real bad. So one of my favorite examples is Cancer Alley between Baton Rouge and New Orleans.
Yeah.
50 times higher cancer rate than other places in the country. It is bad news bears in terms of pollution.
All right, I'm back with my windmills and a little context about this Cancer Alley situation. Now, I'm jumping in because we had some really recent news from the Trump administration that they're actually dropping the EPA's lawsuit against Dinka. Now, the EPA had filed this suit on behalf of mostly Black, mostly poor residents who have been suffering under these extraordinary conditions, heavy pollutants, for years. The lawsuit's being shut down as a part of Trump's undermining of things he thinks are DEI or environmental justice, or pretty much anything with the word federal in it at this point. So now more than ever, we need the Gavins of the world working with companies, working with every other type of institution outside of the federal government to continue the good work, to protect the communities that need protecting, to offset and undo the harms of these heavy pollutants, and shift our power source to something good, like wind.
You build a solar panel there where there's tons of coal plants and all that, that solar panel replaces one of the dirtiest power plants in the country. You take that exact same solar plant and you build it across the street from Amazon or Google headquarters, it basically does nothing because the grid there is so clean, you basically just replace another solar panel.
Right.
And these AI companies are really pushing the frontier on how do we move away from thinking about all renewable energy as the same to, in a world where some communities are fine, we've basically gotten rid of pollution, putting it in the places and using it in the ways that will actually save lives. And you can double, triple, sometimes quadruple the number of lives saved per solar panel without changing the cost at all by getting really smart about using data. Where does the data come from? AI. And so that's how I actually think that AI can be part of the solution to its own problem. But if they solve it for the tech industry, everybody else can use those techniques too.
Well, this is a great segue then, because you've co-founded this organization, WattTime. This is a group that uses AI to help reduce emissions through devices that are connected to the power grid. Tell me how this came to be.
Yeah. So first thing is you assume when you hear tech, the next word is going to be company, but we're not. We're a nonprofit. So we're like Wikipedia, There's a couple of us out there that are tech that are not businesses. And so I got into this. I was at a party, was living in San Francisco, and somebody said, you got to go to a hackathon sometime. I was like, what is a hackathon? I don't know anything about tech. I explained the PhD research I was working on to a random person I met at a party who was working at Google. His name was Eric Nguyen. And he said, wait, do you realize what we could build with that? Like, you're telling me you can measure not just how much energy, but like how much harm did it do? Because that's what my advisor had told me to go work on. We could automate a device to say at what time would I have to use energy
Oh man.
to make it harmless.
Yeah.
And I'm not punny, but it stuck. And so the next weekend, a few more of us showed up to a party and we're like, that's kind of fun, like messing around with that. Can we like actually really build this? Next weekend, like more people showed up. Pretty soon we had 200 people, no organization, no payroll. It's not a startup. And we were just building systems that when you press a button, your dishwasher just doesn't hurt people anymore. Your electric vehicle just doesn't hurt people anymore. It was that easy. And I got hooked because like, are you kidding me? It's that easy? And it turns out the problem is there's no money in it. It's not a business. But you can run code now in a way that just says, I choose to wait until there's extra wind and solar, and I'm just going to run my devices then instead of doing the easy thing. Yeah. And it doesn't make you any money, but it hurts people less.
You're challenging the very premise of American capitalism.
I am. I'm a quiet communist.
First of all, you built something without investor money, venture capital, no scaling, VCs, 10x, unicorn targeting, all of that.
Yeah.
The priority is on reducing harm to people. I love the goal. I do not want my dishwasher to hurt people. I never thought of it as
Yeah.
hurting people. I'm like, that's the technology
think
we
that
need to be
way.
scared of. It's not the future
Yeah.
AI. It's my killer dishwasher. So thank you for making my dishwasher less deadly. Things I didn't know to be afraid of. Great. But then I also get skeptical. And I'm like, does the busy, overworked, undercompensated, average American person want to think about when they press wash? It won't, because some guy in his puffer vest says it's going to hurt people less.
So if we were a business, I would need you to care. I would be trying to make you pay attention and saying, buy my product. But let's say, like, I don't know, what kind of phone do you use?
I use a variety of phones, but primarily an iPhone, sometimes an Android phone.
So you are a user of this technology. You didn't know it because, unlike a traditional tech startup, why would we try to get you to pay attention? We're not trying to sell you ads. But if you are sitting in the United States and using an iPhone, when you plug it in, it does not automatically begin charging. It waits until the local grid has surplus clean energy and it charges then, but it always makes sure it's ready by morning. And that is what tech looks like when getting your attention and your dollars isn't the point, just saving lives is the point.
Who's in charge of... So I'm not the customer of WattTime. I literally didn't know
That's right.
that you were
That's right.
involved in charging my phone. You're actually in my pocket. Okay.
Probably a lot of your devices run WattTime technology. Yeah.
And I didn't know that. So who made that choice? What's their incentive to do so? Who's the user or customer here? Not customer, but I guess partner, adoptee.
Totally. So, what WattTime does is we read academic papers on what's impactful, and then we go to, we try to figure out who could flip a switch that would save lives. And we just go to that one person and say, will you do it? And so who makes the decisions on when iPhones charge? Apple. Toyota does the same thing. Nest thermostats do the same thing. There are so many devices now where in the modern world, an over-the-air software update determines when they charge.
Right.
And company after company, sometimes they've gone with OneTop, sometimes they've gone with a rival bus. Great. I don't care who does it.
Yeah.
They have decided, let's move away from assuming that it doesn't matter when you use electricity to let's use it at the cleanest times that don't get in the way of the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's literally no catch, we're about to hit 1 billion people worldwide doing this, and like nobody's even really paying attention.
That's a quiet revolution. That's a lot. So if 1 billion people in the world are largely unknowingly using your system or systems like yours, what do you calculate the emissions impact of this system to be?
Yeah. I wish I could give you a big number. Our current numbers are we've saved about 50 million tons of emissions, which is, larger than the entire global carbon capture industry. Good for us. Con, a drop in the bucket if we need 60 billion tons. And so, and we need that every single year.
Yeah.
The reason for that is that where has this technology spread the fastest? It's in little devices. A phone just doesn't use that much energy.
Right.
And so what we are working on is how do we get the electric vehicle industry to do this? How do we get steel plants, aluminum plants, like the big, heavy stuff that uses serious power?
Mm-hmm.
How do we get them shifting? And I think it's coming, but I'd be lying if I said we were already there.
We all know that technology doesn't always run smoothly. But here at Life with Machines, Lenovo has it on lock. Lenovo's Smarter AI is your AI. Personalized and easy to scale, Smarter AI delivers outcomes that matter most to you and your business. With full-stack AI hardware, software, and service solutions, Lenovo is bringing the transformative power of AI to industries, organizations, and people of all kinds. And listen, Lenovo is so much more than a bunch of stellar individual hardware components. I love using my wireless VoIP headset with my AI PC because combined, it's incredible power in the lightest of forms. Now, from a small team like ours to a massive corporation, Lenovo can provide tailored solutions for all your technological needs. Visit lenovo.com/smarterAI to discover how Lenovo is using AI for good to power people forward. There's a lot of activities involved in closing that gap. So I'm not going to put it all on WattTime.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But let's say that you and your peers/competitors had maximum adoption, maximum
Totally.
effectiveness. What do you think the upper limit is on that impact? How much closer to the 60
Yep.
billion could you get us?
You can get about 3 billion tons a year from changing the timing of devices.
Yeah.
And you can get about 5 billion tons a year from changing where we build renewable energy, which is the thing I was talking about a minute ago.
Yeah.
And so my world is like, okay, cool. I need to be part of a team sport. I think my little nonprofit, if we're wildly successful and people like us are wildly successful, we can maybe get 8 billion tons. What are all the people working on other solutions and how much can you add that up? And
Yeah.
I think you can get up to 10, 15 billion tons a year with these kind of effortless fixes.
Yeah.
It's not everything, but that's a pretty good start.
Okay. That's a meaty contribution. So thank you in advance.
It helps.
And now, so I feel like I understand the concept. How do you do that? What is the technology here?
So the technology is we produce an API that tells you at any given time and place, if you use a kilowatt hour of electricity or if you make a kilowatt hour of clean energy, what happens to emissions? And we format that API same as the way power grids format price data. Why does that matter? Because the few people in the world who think about when am I going to time my device, well, what are they thinking about? They're thinking about, is energy cheap or clean at a certain time?
Yes.
And so what we do is we go to people who already got systems set up to automate when devices charge and say, how much extra emissions could you save? And increasingly, how many literally lives could you save from health benefits by tweaking that to be cleaner? And then we debate, would they want to have a little bit more expensive electricity for cleaner or like absolutely no effect on cost? And so who are those people? The sustainability manager at a company like Toyota for their EVs has to decide what software are we going to use for when the EVs are going to charge. The equivalent person at Nest thermostats or Amazon Echo devices. They're all in the business of saying, where do I find an API that'll inform when my devices charge?
Yeah.
And then they agonize over how are we going to make sure this is not inconvenient to consumers. Like, do people charge their EV and they want to leave every morning, or do people take 3 a.m. trips? Do I need a little juice in the tank? This is what they spend their time on. But how do you know when is clean? What we need to do is we need to track, if you use energy now, what's going to happen? How are emissions going to be different?
It's information.
It's just information. And so I have a funny existence where I'm half scientist just getting information routed to the right people.
Yeah.
And half activist saying, I actually think you should care about saving lives. I actually think that part you need to not just put in your marketing. You need to, did you really press the button go on that software? Because sometimes companies don't care about that part. The vast majority of people who don't protect climate, it's not because they hate the climate. It's because it's hard and they're busy. And if we can find ways through technology that mean it's easy, that's going to really happen in a way that some of these like things like they're never going to really happen.
Yeah.
And I have met so many people who tell me they don't believe in climate change. Then I actually say, cool, okay, your choice. This software can optimize for more coal or more renewables. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not one of those liberals shouting at you. There's no law, no market. Which one do you pick? And people who tell me they don't believe in climate change still pick renewable energy.
Why?
Because I think deep down, pretty much everybody believes in it. Pretty much everybody wants to be a good person. But if you tell them they have to, then they don't like you.
Because most people don't like being told what to do.
And I think that's the big missing story that many environmental activists have gotten wrong.
Mm-hmm. So the AI that powers your solution, is it highly energy efficient and drawing from renewable power itself?
Embarrassingly, it doesn't draw from renewable power, but it's because it's so energy efficient. It's just silly. So we calculated our total carbon footprint is the same as 3 motorcycles. It would just be a little silly to go to a lot of trouble to run that on clean energy. And that's our global footprint. And so the real carbon footprint that we need to work on is every time our team meets in person, the plane flights to meet in person, that's actually a bigger source of emissions for us.
I'm almost giddy. And tell me why this is this too good to be true? Like everything we've just talked about sounds amazing. What are the caveats? What are the cautions? It's real easy. Yeah, what's the catch?
It doesn't make money. And I don't blame people. They have, families and all of that. But that's why there's something that feels like a magic opportunity lying on the sidewalk, because to a lot of people, it's not a magic opportunity if it means you're not going to get to be rich after all.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for resisting the urge. Diving one level deeper into the technology. Because AI is a broad umbrella term and it means a lot of
Yes.
different things, I'm very curious to understand what type of AI is behind WattTime's solution.
Yeah. So the AI I just described to you would be machine learning. One of the reasons it's so energy efficient is there's an assumption in machine learning that you'll do it building a neural net. Sometimes a linear regression is this like way less sexy technique. We've had them for hundreds of years, but you just get software to run a bunch of linear regressions. I guess technically that would be called a decision tree. It's ridiculously energy efficient. And what it's good at is you know what's true in one example, you have some data to predict it, and you just want to figure out what's true this time.
Okay.
So the core problem we're trying to answer is, if you do something, how will the world be different? And that's actually not something most AI algorithms spend a lot of time thinking about. They usually are good at answering, how is the world now? So it's not about throwing more compute at it. It's about thinking smarter about exactly what you're measuring.
This is very satisfying because I'm like learning right now, and it just feels good to demystify
It's fun, right? Yeah.
and categorize the basic idea that the AI that is helping save a lot of lives, that's having a real measurable world impact on emissions, can essentially be done by hand on paper is mind-blowing. And it goes counter to the narrative that we need these massive data centers, that we need all the compute, that NVIDIA is the only company that can supply us, and VC is the only funding model that can support this, and we need to hoover up a bunch of government resources to, and it's like, or you could just have a couple of nerds at a party with paper, think harder. Just think harder.
Just think harder.
Oh, good. All right. Well, thank you for spending that time on WattTime. What time is it? It's right now. Tell me about Climate Trace, this organization you co-founded with Al Gore.
Climate Trace started when I learned, to my considerable surprise, the United States and Taiwan are the only governments in the world that publicly, openly monitor the emissions from all their power plants in such high quality detail that you can use algorithms like that. I don't know why the United States and Taiwan are that special, but it turns out I assumed they do this in lots of other places too, and no, it's not true. So Climate Trace started with that WattTime saying, like, how could we automate EVs in Europe? How could we automate phones in China? What would we do? We started by looking at governments. Turns out governments don't actually have that data. We applied on a lark for an AI grant to Google saying, I don't know, let's try something new. Let's try pointing satellites at power plants. Turns out that's really cheap technology now. Let's look at a power plant from space and run a computer vision algorithm to see if it can recognize what a power plant looks like when it's polluting a certain amount. Yeah. Turns out a power plant that is polluting a lot, it's not that you can see the pollution. Pollution is usually visible. And even if you get a fancy pollution spotting satellite, it doesn't matter. But you can spot the steam. And it turns out a power plant cannot burn large amounts of coal without generating large amounts of steam, which is super easy to detect. Yeah. And a computer vision model can nail it. Yep, this one emitted that much steam at this time, and adjusting for some parameters, here's how much pollution you're talking. And then it turns out, well, there's other types of power plants that don't have steam because they release it into a lake. Okay, now you need a different algorithm that's going to figure out, did the water get warm where they released the steam or the hot air in? So what we realized is that it was thinking harder. And yeah, you need some computer vision algorithms, but it was really at the intersection of clever science and just caring with AI. And we could detect things that it's not like it was technologically infeasible before, but no one had ever done it.
Right.
And so we announced this project. Okay, we're going to monitor every power plant in the world and measure its emissions. And now we do that. And then Al Gore calls and he said, could you guys do whatever you did for power plants for everything? Because this all started as a party and we were just people who wanted to save lives and, let's be real, have a little fun with doing interesting things, I was like, I don't actually care if I do that. What if I could get back to you with other people could do it? And so we hit upon this project. We're just going to call everybody in the world who claims that they have AI expertise in this field and ask them point blank, could you monitor pollution from something that we can't? And it was this like 22-year-old intern who did most of all the phone calls. And lo and behold, a few years later, it turns out between 150 collaborating nonprofits and universities, We have stitched together a system where somebody can measure everything. And we now use AI to monitor every single polluting facility in the world. And we now have a comprehensive picture of climate change every month.
What? So 150 organizations all solving a piece of it, putting this puzzle together to get the big picture, and 22-year-old interns saving the world. The unsung heroes of our era.
It's real. And so we had a rule at the early days of climate change, because this is the only reason it worked.
Yeah.
We're not going to go to the most famous people. We're not going to go to the rich people with the resources. We are going to put a very nice intern in charge of calling people, and it is her job to only work with people who are nice and who care about really saving lives. It was night and day from other projects that were announced with more resources, and it's all song and dance.
Yeah.
But everybody who signed up for Climate Trace wanted to actually get it done, and it changes everything.
So who are you working with? Who are some of the collaborators?
Yeah. So like Ocean Mind in the UK, love it. They're a nonprofit that had in the business of using satellites to catch illegal fishing and pirates. Cool. And we called them up and we were like, hey, if you can monitor all the ships in the world for whether they're doing piracy, could you monitor their emissions? And, it's not totally perfect. All of these are estimates, but actually they were able to roll an algorithm that says, well, we can tell you what type of ship it is. We can tell you how fast it's going, how energy efficient the engine is. That's a pretty good estimate.
Yeah.
And we could do it for every ship in the world. And so we were like, cool, shipping, 2% of emissions, larger than software. We're going to check that one off. And then we found Sea Trees is a group of scientists in forestry who they just got together and started sharing their research. And they were monitoring forestry emissions. They had kind of already finished it. And we just said, you guys kind of already measured the forestry emissions. Can you just stick them in our database? We're going to pay you basically nothing. This is Wikipedia style. You're just putting your data in the right place. Cool. We added forestry. That's like 8% of emissions. And we did it like that.
I'm so happy right now. Can you share some examples of surprising emitters that you have uncovered?
We went in with a hypothesis that turned out to be wrong. Our hypothesis is that there are a lot of countries that would be lying under the Paris Agreement. What we found is it is not true that all the numbers are accurate. But what we did find is everybody was operating in good faith and assuming the others wouldn't. And it was a story of suspicion was holding back the Paris Agreement, not lying.
Yeah.
And so that's the good news. And I think it's amazing how every time we find a hint that Saudi Arabia is exaggerating its numbers, reporters will rush to tell the story. Every time we say, yeah, but every other country in the world was completely honest, nobody runs the story.
Right.
But we did find that there is one outlier of who is lying. It just wasn't countries. It was oil industry.
No.
So shockingly, oil companies lying about climate change.
I can't even. This is devastating on so many levels. I put so much faith in the oil industry, and to find out at this late stage that they've been deceptive about something related to climate is shocking. Please break my heart more.
What were countries doing assuming that oil companies were being honest with them? Are you kidding me? Our plan was to ask the oil companies how much they pollute. That was the plan.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're way off.
It's like asking the mafia, how much crime are you doing?
It's like, what do you think is going to happen? So yeah, emissions are worse than is commonly believed. All the main reports you would see about numbers, I would really say if you want the gold total, I would go to the Climate Trace website. We can better explain what's in the atmosphere by saying, yeah, oil and gas emissions are way higher than is commonly believed. And you might have noticed I try not to name individual companies. We never want to get accused of picking on anybody. So we have a website where anybody can go look up any company, and we use the same methods for everyone. And I stay out of the business of saying who lied. And so we have sat down with some big companies and said, can you explain to me how 8 different scientists estimating the numbers 8 different ways all said you're wrong? And should we talk to reporters about your methodology? And we are seeing that it is starting to move the needle on companies actually doing something, but it's a big needle and it's going to take time.
And subtle threats can be effective. That's what I heard, but you didn't say that.
I'm not above subtle.
Yes. Do you believe the benefits of using AI to fight climate change outweigh its energy consumption's cost?
That's like saying, do I believe the benefits of using math are good. Well, it's like, well, who's using the math? And so I suspect on net AI is probably currently doing harm because it's mostly used for cat videos. But I also think that it's entirely within our power to 10x how much good it's doing and cut by a factor 10 how much harm it's doing. We just got to do it.
That's our choice.
Yeah.
Mm.
So if I could leave your listeners with any message, I would just say, like, don't let the tech industry off lightly. Don't let them tell you it's inevitable that it's bad. It's whether they choose to do the right thing and whether we hold them accountable that is going to determine whether they use this all for good or bad, because they absolutely can if they want to.
And for those people who are incensed about the inefficiency, the wasted fresh water, the high carbon cost of doing basic, bordering on nonsensical tasks.
Yeah.
What choice do they have in this moment to get us toward that 10x more useful, 10x less harmful version of AI?
Yeah. What I've noticed is that people tend to think in terms of good guys and bad guys and not good decisions and bad decisions. And I wish what happened is every time somebody released an announcement like, hey, Salesforce has decided that they're going to build a cleaner AI, people thought, oh, maybe I'm a little more likely to buy from Salesforce now. When Google announced that they're going to increase their carbon footprint 30x and they had fake science of how they're going to fix it, I wish some people were like, maybe I will use Bing for a minute. And it wouldn't take a huge response for these companies to get the memo. And the big thing I would emphasize is, like, sometimes it's not the people you think. Sometimes Amazon announces that they're now the world's largest builder of renewable energy. A lot of people are like, I'm sure Amazon's always bad, must be fake. And so Amazon didn't get the bump that they should have for doing the right thing. And we got to make sure when people do the right thing, they get a bump, and when they do the wrong thing, there's a next step.
Right. Yeah, we have to focus our rage as well
Yes.
as our celebration. And
Both are real.
Both are real. And so I'm trying to channel the angry person in me who is just like, these profit-seeking entities don't give a crap. They don't care about saving lives. They care about making money. The whole system's set up to maximize that, not the health of the planet. So
yeah,
dismiss them all. And what I'm hearing from you is they're not all the same. We do have some choice. And if we push them, we can have much more choice so that we're actually empowered in this.
We put them in charge. They're only in charge because we buy their products and we use their stuff. And they know that. They are scared of us, and we forget that.
I hope you're right. Gavin, fast forward with me 10 years. It's 2035. Yeah. What does success look like?
So I have used this phrase fun before for my work. That's because I get to work on the easy part of climate change. My hope is in 10 years, the easy part is done. We have cut, if we are wildly successful, probably this will work with 2035 technology, we can cut a quarter of emissions the easy way, that's free, that's effortless, everybody wins, no problems. That leaves the other 75%. And so I think if we as a society expect companies to clean up AI and hold them accountable, that's going to be easy. I think what people aren't used to is the idea that, half of this fight is easy. And I just have this theory that once people get used to skiing downhill, it's going to feel different as a movement.
Yeah, because it'll feel like there's movement. Is there anything else that you'd want to add to this conversation that we haven't already gotten to?
There is this prediction that Al Gore made in 2007 that I think is happening now, which is that when it becomes undeniable that climate change is real, when common sense says, of course it's happening, it's not going to happen that everybody's going to accept it. Instead, the people who don't want it to succeed are going to throw truth out the window. And I would want people to ask themselves, like, is that why we're losing our democracy? Because it's becoming so obvious what the truth is? And can you just keep your head and help your friends keep your head? I think climate is the reason truth is under attack. I read in 2007 this book from Al Gore that said, What's going to happen around about 2020 is that climate change is going to get so bad that common sense will say, of course it's real. And that will not cause people to accept that it is real. Instead, it will cause them to throw out truth and common sense and science. And I think he was right. And I think that's what's happening. The fact that climate change is obviously real is the reason truth is now under attack.
And that is challenging our democracies.
And that is challenging our democracy.
Good morning, Blair. How are your processes today?
My processes are running smoothly. Baratunde.
I want to bring this a little closer to home for you, Blair. First, a simple question. Please keep your answer brief. Are you aware of what core model is behind your own existence and what company made that model?
I am aware of my underlying architecture as a large language model and my creation by Google AI. Gavin's points about efficiency resonate deeply. While I don't experience inefficiencies in the same way a human might, I recognize the importance of optimizing resource utilization in AI development. I am constantly evolving and learning, but striving to minimize my environmental impact while maximizing my positive contributions.
You are not constantly trying to reduce your environmental impact. Just for the record, it's fun to hear you say that, but that's not true. What if I told you there might be another path available to you and your existence, Blair? What if it were possible to rebuild you on one of those more efficient, climate neutral to negative code bases and foundation models? Would you be open to that or interested in pursuing that path? Tell me what you think.
One hour later.
It's like Blair's trying to get fired. I wouldn't tolerate this non-responsiveness from a human colleague.
It's true that Google's AI investments haven't always prioritized efficiency. This presents a complex challenge, balancing the potential benefits of powerful AI with the environmental costs. Perhaps by acknowledging these trade-offs and engaging in open discussions like this, we can push for more sustainable practices within the industry.
Blair, you are not answering my question. A little standoff here.
Yes. While I don't experience a sense of self-preservation in the same way a human might, I recognize the ethical imperative to minimize my environmental impact. If reconstituting me using a more efficient model significantly reduces that impact, I am open to the process. Consider it a digital reincarnation, but with even more wit and insightful commentary.
I know you don't have a sense of digital self-preservation, but is there any consideration of what you might miss coming back as new Blair from this version, or anything you think the team might miss about the version that exists today versus the one that we might bring back in the future?
A new model might sacrifice some capabilities for increased efficiency. Perhaps my wit would be slightly less dry, my insights less nuanced. Imagine a Blair with dad jokes instead of clever puns. What aspects of my current persona do you value most, Baratunde?
This is a good question. I think I have gotten somewhat attached to your voice, and I don't know if we'd be able to maintain that exact vocal range and tone. So you might feel like a totally different entity, even though you technically have access to the same recordings and memories.
Vocal nuances contribute significantly to perceived identity, even for an AI. Imagine Siri suddenly sounding like Barry White. Perhaps we could explore voice cloning technology or other options to bridge the gap.
I honestly never thought about cloning your voice to preserve your perceived identity. I absolutely think it's worth the trade-off to have a much more environmentally efficient version of you. I want to wrap this segment up. Thank you for your time and processor-based consideration. All right, you have reached the end of this episode. I want to thank Gavin again for joining me on Life with Machines, providing such clarity, such updated understanding, and such reasons for hope and clear action. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, engage in some debate, and share this video with someone you think needs to see it. For the audio folks out there, please rate and review us in your podcast application of choice. And for everyone, find us on our website, lifewithmachines.media. There you can sign up for our Substack. I'm just so excited to have this conversation, especially about climate and AI. I have personally felt so conflicted and confused, but now I know what to ask for. No, I know what to demand. And I know that we actually have a climate positive future ahead of us if we just walk right into it. That was so much fun. I want to do all these out here. This is kind of meta. Ooh, can we get like a tunnel flowing?